Welcome to the Unstuck and Happy podcast. We all get stuck, but how long you stay there is up to you. I'm your host, John Polish, founder of the Unstuck Happiness Conference. And this is the show where we interview people who've overcome tremendous adversity and have emerged as leaders. So if you need a little inspiration and hope in your day, get ready, because here comes another great Unstuck story. Well, hello again. Sometimes we talk about getting stuck in the form of a tragedy. Other times it is a series of events that causes us to get stuck. Sometimes it's personally, sometimes it's professionally. Quite often it's a mix of everything. And so our guest today has a pretty great story as far as mixing personal and business and all of that. She's very impressive because of the wide variety of things that she does. And I want to welcome today, Amber Ybarra.
Yes. Hi. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
So Amber, you are in San Antonio, is that correct?
Yes. San Antonio, Texas.
And you currently basically have two jobs, right?
Yes. I'm running two businesses at the moment.
Yeah. So Amber is a life coach, a coach.
Correct.
Life coach, a coach, and a construction owner. You own a construction company, correct?
Yes. I've owned my construction company it's going over 6 years now. And I have progressed into coaching now for almost a full year.
What kind of coaching are you doing?
I specifically work with women to help reinvent themselves. Women who are mostly other entrepreneurs who need to really do some inner work first so that can help up-level their personal and business life.
I was curious because I know most construction workers in Texas have a life coach, right?
I hope they do. That's a smart way to go about it for sure.
Absolutely. So it's an interesting combination, but to get there, you had quite a journey to get to the point where you can actually coach others. And that's what we want to focus on today is that early journey that you had. You mentioned basically a business divorce.
Yes, the business divorce. It's funny how sometimes we feel like we are so alone in experiencing this experience that shakes our foundation, and where are we supposed to go next in life? And about 3 years ago, that is something that I experienced. I had a very successful business with someone that I was in a relationship with, but we also had a partnership. And it was interesting for me to go through that and to see the shift in everything from the business to who I was coming out of that, going through that. And, again, that happened about 3 years ago. So
for those of you who've never owned a business before, it is truly a labor of love. You put all of your time, money, energy into it, and your identity really becomes a big part of who you are. A very good friend of mine says all the time that she works 24/7 so that she doesn't have to work 9 to 5.
yes.
So yeah, that is, owning a business is a huge deal. So to even be able to step out and start your own business takes a lot of courage, takes, a certain type of person to be able to do that. And then to see it fail.
That is definitely a whole other story. I mean, I did leave it's so funny because back then I felt like I was really being bold. I had left a corporate job that I was in. I was working with one of the largest IT companies in the world. And I stopped that to move into this new space of, you know what, I want to give myself a shot. This was over 6 years ago now. And going through that was amazing. I was happy to have built this successful business, but and that's something I hope we'll talk about today, when you're in a toxic environment, you reach this peak of, this is really as far as I can go with my creativity, with my entrepreneurship, because you need so many things, including your environment, to be one that is positive so that you can really stretch where you're going in your business. And I took that chance. I built it up for 3 years. And 3 years later, I found myself really having I gave all my things away. I said, you know what, keep the business, keep all the things. I just want to get out, do something on my own. And I had to build from the ground up again. And it took a lot, but 3 years later, I have my thriving construction company, and I've been able to build a team on top of that, which was something very new to me, and figuring that out so that I could start my coaching and help other people kind of go through that process for themselves.
Awesome. First of all, was that your first business venture?
No, it was my second.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a struggling artist before, and then I had made it into the painting world. I know two very different things, but yes, I was a painter for many years, and I showed at shows, and I traveled the world and did that and did other creative artistic things. And what that taught me definitely played into being in construction, flipping homes, and all the things that I do today.
So how did you get started as far as owning your first business? What was that mindset like?
The mindset, which is funny that we're getting accustomed to that word now. I definitely did not know anything about what my mindset was back then. All I know is that I grew up in a very small town, just an hour away from Mexico. And all I knew was that I wanted to graduate early, leave my hometown, do something big. I knew that I didn't want to go to college. My mom actually worked for a college, and I could have, the thing was, if I stayed in my hometown, I could have gotten a free ride to college because my mom worked there. And it was a pretty big decision even at that point. You know, I graduated early, so I left home when I was just turning 17. And me kind of rejecting that opportunity really meant that I had no other choice than to try to make it in the big city. So I thought it was. And getting into my first business, I really just kind of used the network of people that I had. I was very thankful that I didn't know at the time she was a mentor. There was a lady by the name of Larry Nelson that scouted me for modeling. And her doing that changed the trajectory of my life in the sense of she gave me the opportunity to sign bigger contracts in really major cities like New York and LA. I was able to travel the world. I was signed with Elite Model Management. While I was doing that, I networked and I connected with different people, and I worked all over the country. And that really kind of opened me up to what else could I do. So I was running everything. I've had Amber Ybarra LLC since I was in my teens. So I have literally I've ran workshops. I was judging the National American Miss pageants before I was 18. I really just stepped into anything and everything, mostly because I was naive and I didn't realize the reprimands that you could face when you're owning a business. And fast forward to my mid-20s, I had this opportunity to get into construction and learn how to flip houses and what is investments about. I went through this big period of time in my life where before this whole body positivity movement, that I wanted to just be more than, you know, being a model or being a struggling artist. And I gave it a shot, and that's really changed the direction of my life, and I'm really grateful for it.
That's really cool. So from artist to model to owning a construction company, did you get a little bit of resistance when you went into the construction world?
Oh, so much. My friends and family were like, what are you up to now, Amber? Like, what are you doing? I mean, here's the thing. And I love to speak at tons of schools and universities, and I'd like to let younger people know you really never know what you love until you're in it and you realize whether you want that to be the thing that you're going to work on and work towards. And with painting, I found I love it. I immersed myself in it. But when it came to commission work and being on deadlines, it wasn't fun anymore. And I found teaching myself the world of construction, it was something that I wanted to really set my focus on. And I saw myself there in the long run, just like with speaking and coaching. It's been quite a ride, but there were people that were kind of like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know construction. But guess what? We don't know how to walk when we're children, and we don't know a million and one things. And anything that we want to do, we have to teach ourselves. And I was not about to let other people's opinions limit the potential I knew that there was in what I was getting into.
There's like 3 different directions I want to take this conversation in right now, because there's really cool stuff there. First of all, you went from painting artist to modeling to owning a business and then construction, right?
Yes.
So what was the transition like out of one into another? And I ask you that because the real purpose of the Unstuck podcast is to show people that, if you keep moving, opportunities will come your way. But quite often when things don't work out, we tend to sit in that and look for answers. Why didn't this work? Why isn't this happening? Why me type of mentality, and rather than just pivoting and moving on to something else. And that's something that you have seemed to do very well, to be able to pivot and move from one thing to another, and not only one thing to another, but drastically different things.
Yeah.
Move to. So can you just tell us kind of a little bit about what inspired you, motivated you to keep moving through that time?
I definitely will. And as much as I am, and by the way, I do love that question, because I know a lot of them seem so far off from each other, and I'm about to kind of paint the picture that kind of draws them all together. There are things that we're good at. There are things that we love. Sometimes the thing that we're best at doesn't always make us happy. And then on the other spectrum of that, the things that we love the most, sometimes they're not the thing that always makes us the money to gain that financial freedom that a lot of us are looking for. So for me personally, that journey just looked like, I'm going to try the things that I love to do as a creative. And I did pretty well going into that. But the things I didn't love, I said, you know what? I tried it. I gave myself a shot. Let's move on to the other passion that I have. Because the last thing I want to do is look back and regret, oh my gosh, I could have been a professional hair and makeup artist, but I didn't try it. It's like, I tried it. I got paid good for it. I got gigs. I've done many things in my life, and that's great, but I still wasn't fulfilled. So my pivot around that was, when I was in that state of being a struggling artist, I'm like, oh my gosh, I found something that I enjoy doing, but I love to also travel the world. And how can I make what I love to do fit into this lifestyle I'm trying to create? And a lot of that came from what will help me gain financial freedom. And I suck out many opportunities that would help me get there. And one of that was building this construction company. I had seen friends flip. I dated someone that was in the business and said, oh my gosh, your work ethic is insane. Like, just come with me for a week. Just look at what we do and let's team up on some projects together. And so I did it. And I saw what he was able to do in his life for himself. And I thought to myself, that is where I want to be. In 2 to 5 years, that is where I want to be. And so I blocked out everything else. I gave up the modeling. I stopped the acting. I stopped all the other things. And I focused on building this construction company. And that's where I was able to kind of gain the financial freedom I wanted and travel more. And it's interesting. There's a really beautiful quote that talks about, like, you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going back. And I have found that true in my life, because to some people it may seem like, oh, okay, you went from an artist and a model and a construction company, now you're a coach. And I've never felt more alive in myself than I am now, being able to help people, knowing that I know how to transition, I know how to reinvent myself, and I know what it takes to build a company from the ground up multiple times. And it's if I didn't do a lot of the things I did in my past, I don't think I would have had the knowledge to get me through all of the trials that I've been through since then to where I am now.
I like that. You can't connect the dots forward, but you can connect them backward. However, one thing that I have realized in my life is, for a long time, I was guessing at what that picture was going to look like out ahead. Like, this must be happening so that this can happen in my future. And I would guess at it and start moving that way. And of course, it never worked out the way that I had guessed or imagined it would.
100%.
However, had I not had that vision and imagination, I probably wouldn't have been moving in that direction when something else happened that caused me to change and do, so I could have stayed stuck and sat here going, well, boy, that didn't work out. This sucks. Instead, I created this vision of like, well, maybe it's this. And on my way to what I thought it was going to be, it became something completely different.
I resonate with that as well. And to be honest, a lot of the way that I've lived my life the last decade is a person that is resourceful. And I also leave things up to chance. There are so many things that my mind says is right that my gut feeling tells me is wrong. And I'm always going with my gut feeling, which is also beautiful because then it exposes you to these opportunities that you never knew were there. And so while I'm taking, okay, I have to make this one big decision. Like, I'm sure everyone's been there where you're in that fork in the road and this seems like a small choice, but it really isn't. Like, you choose to go this way, your whole life's going to be different. And are you going to regret saying, oh my gosh, what if I had just said no to that opportunity? Or what if I had just said yes to that opportunity? And that is truly how I live my life. I take these, what may seem like small moments, and I always put all of my thought into, how is this going to look for my future? And is it the right thing for me now? Because as much as I have for so long wanted financial freedom and things like that, not everything I do is because of money. And I have come across other people who they will take any opportunity if it's like, oh my gosh, what that's where I'm going to get paid the most. I think it is important to really stop yourself and say, hey, is this aligned with my values and where I see myself going in the future? Even though that's still unknown, we might have an idea of what it looks like, but as we all know, not everything goes as we planned.
Absolutely. So what I teach as far as being stuck and unstuck is that every problem is really the result of one thing and one thing only, and that is an unmet expectation. You expect things to be a certain way, and when it's not, it creates this gap, and we instantly fill that gap with a negative emotion. The longer we sit in that negativity, the more likely we are to get stuck. The interesting part, though, is when you can pivot and move out of that right away, and one door kind of opens another, as it seemed like it did early on for you. We look at that, we call that flow. Like, things are just flowing. It's a great thing. But when we stop and we sit in that negativity, we end up stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the biggest difference is how long do you sit in a negative emotion? So what I want to move to next with you is that moment of being stuck, because everything was kind of, whether it was working out or not, there was a natural flow until the business divorce.
Yes. So let me rewind there. Yes and no. There were many moments of resistance in all the different times that I changed, or what I like to call reinvented myself in my life. But being stuck, what is so scary to me is that you don't even realize when your life has shifted. You don't realize sometimes when your identity is stripped from you, whether it's because you're in love in a new relationship that maybe is not right, whether you have taken an opportunity overseas and you're saying, oh my gosh, I never even thought that being without like near family and friends would really impact me this much. Whatever the situation is in people's lives, sometimes we can stay stuck there for years. And for me personally, that was for over 2 years that I was stuck. So to me, the one thing that made me snap out of that, and again, this isn't for me, I'm talking about, this is in the middle of my business divorce. So I realized that I needed to go through this and to remove myself from that environment when I realized that my parents, some of my best friends were pulling me to the side saying, Amber, you were not yourself. Are you okay? What's going on? And I was so ashamed during that time to even admit that I was going through anything, because I'm the person people go to when they need support and they need help, and I'm Miss Optimistic and I wake up with the birds chirping in the morning. Like, that's just I'm a bubbly personality. And it was a really big slap in the face for someone, my loved ones, to come and tell me, hey, you're not yourself right now. So to me, that was the first thing. is when the people you love notice a change in you that you can't see for yourself. That is a major wake-up call. Do not miss that red flag. It's so important to rely, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to say, I need support. I was too hard-headed to figure that out. And that's why I was in my stuck for so many years. So the first thing is realizing that there is an issue. The second thing is really understanding what the issue is. I love to talk about the 3 E's, which is, where are you dedicating your effort? Where is your energy going? And what is the environment in which you're surrounding yourself in? Those to me are the 3 most important things that I look at anytime I'm feeling stuck in my life. Because if I'm around people that are draining my energy day in and day out, I need to realize that those are not my people. The people that I am around need to be lifting me up. I need to be helping to support them. And neither of us should feel drained after a conversation. The second thing, of course, like I mentioned, is your effort. Where's your effort going? If the only effort that you're putting into your day is, I have woken up to take a shower. Honey, you are in a depression. Like, wake up. And yes, you know what? That is a big win and you should celebrate it. But if you are not putting your effort and your focus into getting things done, into creating momentum in your life, you have to know that something's wrong. And then the third thing is your environment. If you are putting yourself surrounded by people, again, that are not helping to support you, how are you supposed to move out of that stuck and out of that funk in your life? So yeah.
So your 3E, I have another 3Es and a couple things very similar, but did you have this information as you were going through that business divorce, or is this something you learned after?
This is something I learned after. That's why I feel it took me so long to figure it out, because I didn't know the first step. All I knew was that what shook me again was my friends and family and loved ones saying, you were not yourself. And I didn't know where to go from that. All I knew, my step 1 at that moment was get out of the situation. I was in and it was hard because I was living with someone that I was in a relationship with, that I had a business with. So can you imagine the overwhelm that it feels to be with someone that you care about and love, that you've been in a relationship for years with, that you know you have to get out of the relationship. You have the successful business with them and you have to get out of the business because money doesn't mean a thing when you're not happy. And little did I know lawsuits and all this stuff would come after that. And it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, it sounds cliche, but you really do have to hit rock bottom and feel like the only way I'm going to change my life is if I get out, even though getting out's tough. So I realized that a year later, and I say it took me 2 years to get unstuck because it took me a year to realize it. And once I did, it took me another year to get out of it.
That's interesting, because part of what both of us do now in coaching and speaking is to help people, give them those tools so that they don't necessarily have to hit rock bottom the same way.
Exactly.
I have been through this. And the reason I asked if you had learned that afterwards is because I've been through that same situation twice in my life.
Oh, wow.
Well, the first time was after I lost my mother and my daughter in the same year and ended up divorced. And so there was a whole lot of tragedy in a short time, and I had none of the skills to handle it. And so I found what I refer to as a functional depression. I didn't think I was depressed, but I was alienating everyone around me and was kind of grumpy and miserable. And so looking back, I can see the depression, but I didn't feel it at the time, kind of like what you were saying. Fast forward, the next time was actually just this past year, having gone through, I literally went through another divorce, had a business partner who left for a relationship. So that kind of ended quickly. And another business partner suddenly passed away, all within a 2-week period. So literally every place that I had spent my time and energy had disappeared within 2 weeks. The difference between the two experiences, though, is the first time I didn't have a clue. And like you said, it was other people seeing it in me and me denying it and pushing it away. the second time I was fully aware of everything that was going on and I knew where my bottom was. I couldn't necessarily prevent it from happening, but so you talked about your 3 E's. I have something that I created, the personal happiness graph. I can graph anyone's life in a couple minutes, see how happy they are in what areas. And I judge everything off of 5 areas. I look at everything through this lens now. And that is 5 areas of our lives that we have expectations in. One is people, our relationships. The other is responsibilities, which is what I consider to be like really your sense of purpose, your why. The activities, the things you do for fun, finances, and environment. So P for people, R for responsibilities, A for activities. I use a $ for money, and E for environment. I call them my praise categories.
Oh, I love that.
So I of course, people tell me I can't use a $ as an S. I do anyway. And I've had other people call me and say, you know, you have to change that. You have to add another one because there's supposed to be an I in praise.
Nope. Yeah. This is your acronym, and I think it's an awesome one.
What I tell everybody is if I don't need praise, praise don't need I. We're good.
I love that. No, and I think it's so true, because what makes up most of our life, right? All the 5 things you just mentioned, that's what makes up the quality of our life.
Yeah. So you mentioned environment. That's one of my categories. So what happened with me is as I'm kind of in that downward spiral and I say, okay, I'm now losing everything. I've lost marriage, best friend, business partner just passed away. Everything's instead of, and I'm not going to say I didn't do it. There were some down moments during that time. Absolutely. But I was able to quickly look at it through another lens and say, okay, I know what I have to do to make this better. Ironically, the number one thing that I realized was I had spent all of my time either with her and her family or with these other 2 people who are now gone. So the first thing I need to fix is the people problem. I need to get around more people.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as that happens, we get quarantined. But yeah.
Oh no. But you know what? I want to mention something that you just struck a chord with me in right here, is that is the thing with environment and with people, is that there are some people that you need to detach yourself from or give distance to. But also, because I also found myself neglecting people. There were best friends I had that I was like, oh, I love you, but like, and I know it's your daughter's birthday, and I hate to admit this, it's horrible, but like, and this is my best friend, it's your daughter's birthday, but I just, like, work came up, I'm sorry, I can't. Because I was in such a place back then that I didn't even want to go out and get out of my yoga pants to go to my best friend's daughter's birthday. But I love that you brought that up, because sometimes when you're in that mode of feeling stuck, that's the best thing you can do, is surround yourself with not only people you love, but in new environments. Yep. So, and some people ask too, well, what if the people that I feel are toxic in my life is my mom, my dad, my siblings, my cousins, something like that? Is I get that question a lot. And it's like, I get it. You can't just, like, if you're in a relationship, separate and then sayonara, you don't have to see that person again. All of this takes work, all of it takes time, and all of it takes something important that I feel people don't discuss enough, which is boundaries. So I feel like that's something that I would suggest for people to work on. That's something that helped me going through my stuck to get out of it, was just keeping those boundaries, because sometimes you don't have the option to just cut people off, nor should you. You shouldn't cut off and say, okay, you're out of my life forever, to every person you feel is toxic for the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I was in the middle of everything I was going through this past year. I was planning an Unstuck Happiness conference here in Vegas. I was serving as president of the National Speakers Association here. I had a lot of roles in which required me to be positive and uplifting. And yet there were many times when I felt like I'm not the person to do this. I'm going through this, major event in my life, and I'm kind of feeling depressed. And yet here I am trying to be the face of all this positivity. And I kind of had that imposter syndrome going for a little while. Like, who am I to do this? But then having the skills, that I didn't have 10 years ago when I went through this, I was able to look at that and say, you know what? No, there are 2 versions of me right now. There's the one that is going through this, and then there's also the positive and, the leader. Yeah. And I get to choose which one I feed.
100%.
Right.
I love that you said that too, because we ultimately do have a choice. And I feel like sometimes it takes that experience. Believe me, if I didn't even know that coaches existed and that you could call someone to help shift your mindset until just a few years ago. If I'm very honest, it saved my life knowing that I had there was a community out there of people who had been through similar things that could help me with not only getting through the process, but now something like that to me, I feel like it wouldn't happen now because I just am so self-aware. Like it's something I've worked on gradually for years. And unfortunately it took me a business divorce, lawsuits of 40K plus and going through the trenches to really know myself better and to also fix some of the kind of negative patterns I had in my life that had led me to that moment. And that's what I hope to help people with, is to realize those patterns so that they don't have to show up in a situation or be in a situation that they end up feeling hopeless in, because so many of us find ourselves there, even if we're strong people and we're motivated people and we're the president of clubs and we're out there giving back to our community because we have big hearts. It happens to the strongest of people. So it's always one of the things I search for is keeping that community.
And speaking of keeping the community, you easily could have walked away, and instead you chose to rebuild that business and to basically stay there.
Yes.
That could not have been easy.
It wasn't. I went through many debates of where was I going. I knew if I dedicated myself to any business to build, I could do it. But I really have enjoyed construction, and I really love it. I want to stay small. I don't want to get into this huge corporate, become this huge corporate company or anything like that. But it's something that I chose. And once I made that decision, I stuck with it. And it didn't take me long to build it up, because for the last business I built with my partner, I did all the legwork and really was the face of the company. And that's the truth. So it was very easy to get back into what I was doing. I decided to metaphorically burn the list of all the people that I knew that wanted to work with that old business, and said, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it with a good conscience. I'm a woman of faith. So whatever you believe in, whether it's karma and spiritual or God or whatever you believe in, my thing was, I'm going to move forward, not burning any bridges. I'm going to do it as a good human, and I'm going to do it in a way that I know sticks with my values. Because if everything else has gone away from me, the last thing that I'm going to let someone else take is the fact that I'm a good human. So it was very hard in building it back up. But again, I realized how much being a good person and doing good quality work paid off. And I think that's what helped me build my business back up. And in the first 3 months, I was already a 6-figure business again. So it was, I'm very grateful for that. And took a lot of hard work. Of course, it doesn't just happen. But when you know something and you're skilled at it and you know how to do it, if you just stick to it right and stick with your principles with it, good things will happen.
And what made you want to start giving back and coaching female entrepreneurs?
I love this question. Honestly, I wish that there was someone that I knew of that could have helped me back then. I wish for a second I could have just gotten out of my own mind and seen the potential that was in front of me if I just kind of stepped out of my own way. I really want to coach women because it's what fills my cup. I enjoy it. It's just the direction that I want to take the rest of my life. So it's something that I want to do forever. And people will sometimes ask, and I'll ask you, audience listening now, if you didn't have to think about money and you could do one thing in your life, that if someone said, you know what, I will give you all the money in the world and you just focus on this one thing that you love and money didn't matter, what would the thing be? And for me, it's coaching. For me, it's helping people. For me, it's speaking to the younger generation. For me, it's making sure that women know that it is okay to be stuck and it's okay to feel all the emotions, especially, for instance, with the pink elephant in the room of the global pandemic that we are going through and getting through together. There's so many people that feel lost and don't know where to turn. And it's important to have those other men, women community to rely on for what are my next steps. And when you feel hopeless in your future, it's the best thing that you could do is to be there to support people, especially when you've been through your own lows.
And that was going to be my next question. I think you answered it already, though. When you're doing business coaching, how much of it is actually business related and how much of it's emotional?
It all starts with the inner work. It really does. It all starts with the inner work, and that shows up in your business. And as much as people might think, oh, it's so woo-woo for you to talk about meditating in the morning or going to bed early and whatever else may seem woo-woo to people, all of those things do play an important part in the makeup of the impact that all the small moments in your day could add up to in the next year of your life or business. And for me personally, and again, I feel I'm in an interesting place in my life because I work with women that are moms and have children. And I understand that all my best friends are married and with kids. I'm a single woman. I'm a fur dog of a 7-month-old pup. And none of that changes when it comes down to being human, to setting up great routines. Because when you're going now, if I go through a place to where I might feel stuck for 30 minutes, right? Or for like a day, it's easy for me to get over that hump because my automatic default is to go back to what I've trained myself to do, which are the good habits that we put in motion for ourselves. So a lot of that work for me is that inner work first, because if you're showing up 100 in your personal life, you're able to carry that into your business. And that mindset should never turn off. You should have that mindset, not just for business and money goals. You should have it for all around life goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of coaching and training, and I've done a lot. I love being in Texas doing this for some reason. It's, it's definitely a old school mindset, and I love teaching it. The last time I was there teaching, talking about emotions in business, and I had a guy that was an owner of a construction company. He looked at me and he goes, when is it okay for me to just look at a guy and say, you're 40 some years old, put on your big boy pants and get to work? Like, why do I have to worry about emotions? I shouldn't worry about feelings. I'm like, well, when is it okay? 1985. It's, not anymore. The thing about it though, is I'm told, it's just business. It's not emotional. It's not personal. Great. Why does a customer make a decision to buy? Oh, that's an emotional decision. Well, if that's an emotional decision, what other decisions are emotional? You don't think your employees every single day are fighting emotions, or whether they're going to come to work motivated or discouraged? And so really learning how to manage emotions is the key. And I tell people all the time, like, in the days of knowledge is power and information is key, that's over. Mm-hmm. Thanks to like the internet and our cell phones, we all have the same information available to us. What makes a great leader in the future are the ones that understand emotions, can read those in other people, and can motivate people that way.
And I love that you said that because it is key. And you just inspired me to add a fourth to my key of ease, which is emotional intelligence.
I actually, my 3 E's that I teach are education, experience, and emotional intelligence. These are the things that go into what causes us to respond. So,
and because it does, you have to know, and this is why I love behavioral science and psychology, just knowing how people work, because the way you and I approach a conversation, can be completely opposite to what I approach the next person with in conversation. All of it's still to my truth, but what is exposed in the conversation and how I am going to react to certain things you ask might be different. And going back to business and me owning a construction company, I never am going to talk to my foreman and my workers and address them as workers. hey team, what's up? Hey guys, because at the end of the day, whether it is the anchor woman or man that's on CNN, or it is the person that you don't realize is your main crew helping you to build the company that you're thriving in for your construction business, we're all just people. We all have family and friends. We all have a mom and dad. We all have these basic human connections and human desires and human needs. So my golden rule is just to always treat people like people, always treat the janitor as you would the CEO. And that's not woo-woo talk. It's literally, that is how I treat people, because you never know what their story is. You never know what someone's been through. And at the end of the day, you could really only help yourself by giving more kindness. And that's how I live by. Even if people want to treat me rude, I don't get angry at that. If anything, I feel empathetic and want to know, like, what is causing your pain in this moment? Because I know it's not me saying hello to you.
Right.
So you just
probably have you back on to have an entire show on just emotions in business, because I have a feeling we could talk about that forever.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm like, we're totally going over.
We are getting close to time though. So I want to ask you quickly to tell us about what it was that helped lift you out of your emotional, after the divorce. What got you moved? What inspired you to move on?
Thank you for that question. What inspired me to move on was me not noticing my reflection in the mirror. I literally had a conversation with myself, just like, who is this person? I feel like there's a time in our life where we can all feel like we are made for more than where we currently have put ourselves in the current position that we're in. And that has been the driving force for me. Just realizing, I know this is not where I'm supposed to be. The rest of my life is not supposed to look like this. And what was scary, the unknown's always scary, but what was really scary was when your heart is involved in something and it wants to overpower everything else, you have to realize that feeling hurt is okay. Going through emotional turmoil, we all need that to experience some of the most beautiful things in life. And if you could just know and realize how strong you are, then all the things you're getting ready to face, whatever faith or things you believe in, just know you have the courage to push through it. And for me, that was the thing. It was knowing that whatever it was I was going to look forward to, it was going to be so much greater than the pain that I allowed myself to continue living in.
Yeah, perfect. I actually started doing Moving Beyond retreats, which are 3-day retreats, helping people process those emotions. And on day one, we have people write a letter to themselves. I don't want to give too much away for those of you who are going to attend the retreat, but day one, we have you write a letter to yourself 10 years into the future saying, what do you expect your life to be like? But on the last day, we have you go back and write a letter to yourself as a child and say, explain some of the things you're going to go through. There is so much power in that, because as you're writing it, you're like, oh, this happened. And at the time that it happened, you felt like it was going to be the end of the world. But when you look back, you realize how resilient you really are. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget how much we've already overcome. And just knowing that, like you talking about, you sitting there saying that, you really are this beautiful, wonderful person as you look in the mirror. Most people don't feel that. But when you look back on the things you have accomplished, one of the things that was interesting for me being a speaker and author and everything now, that as I was going through my own, functional depression, I guess, this past year, the number of times that I had to sit and rewrite my bio and intro for presentations.
Wow.
And every time I had to do that, I'm like, oh, wow, I actually have done quite a bit. And it lifts me up a little bit, realizing that, wow, I have overcome, I have accomplished. I'm not the sum of my mistakes. There is some positivity here. And I think a lot of us don't take the time to sit and do that, especially if your work doesn't require you to. We don't sit down and write out all the things we've accomplished and overcome. So there's a lot of power.
I love it. Yeah, there really is. And really quick, just recently, because I'm working with a really amazing PR firm in New York, they had us do something really uncomfortable. I did a live video where we talked about the top 5 things that make us a badass. And it's so interesting it sounds, oh, cool, how fun. What are what makes you a badass? When you dig deeper into it, we realize how uncomfortable we are giving ourselves credit for the things we overcome, like you just talked about. So even just sitting down and writing out and giving recognition to ourselves for, oh my gosh, we have gone through X, Y, Z. I can't believe I got through that. Like, I'm alive, I'm okay. It really helps us and gives us that resilience that we're looking for to say, well, if I could do that, I mean, this is a piece of cake. So I totally agree with you.
So that person who has failed at business and relationship kind of simultaneously, like you had at that moment, what would you say to that person right now? What is one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's feeling stuck?
Stop ignoring the fact that you are not okay and take action. Stop ignoring the fact that you are not okay and take action, because you know what you need to do next. You just don't want to do it because you think it's too hard.
So in other words, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there.
Yes, exactly. Feel the emotions, cry about it, put cover the sheets over your head for 2 days if you need to, but get up. Don't stay there.
Love it. Thank you very much for being with us today. Hope to catch you guys back next week for another episode of Unstuck and Happy.
Thank you.
Make sure you head over to unstuckandhappy.com, where you'll find the video version of all of our podcasts, as well as information about upcoming Unstuck Happiness conferences and moving beyond personal development retreats. Those are amazing. Make sure you join us again next week for another great Unstuck story. And in the meantime, keep living unstuck and happy.